One of these days I'm going to find some nice clips. Anybody know where I can find some nice clips of the Ukraine war? I don't mean my own clips. I mean some... I think I know where I'm at actually. But if you do, let me know. Anyway, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 4th of November. For those who know the importance of November, never forget. Those who know. November's had a lot of historical events have occurred in November throughout history. Of course, there's the end of World War I. And some people were looking to whether or not Russia or Ukraine could sign an armistice. Obviously, the biggest cheerleader for that was President Trump. Although the most consistent, of course, is Viktor Orban, President of Hungary. But there aren't too many leading figures. There's no big peace movement. The biggest is the most silent. The biggest peace movement in the world, Greenpeace. Every other war, they've been very vocal. You know, a lot of them went to prison in World War II. You know, Roosevelt illegal prisoned over 100,000 peace protesters in World War II. And actually, some of the biggest peace advocates didn't make it to the following Friday. There's a lot of bad history with the peace movement. My camera's starting to sag. Oh, I just bumped it when I was setting up. But the problem is the peace movement then was the peace movement. Since the 1970s, it's been the Communist Party. Really has. They're not interested in peace. In fact, there's you go look at some of the people who follow them. You see Ukraine flags everywhere. I met people who literally did not know Ukraine existed until this war, and suddenly they knew everything about it, and they're experts on geopolitics. Now, a lot of them don't even know the Russian Revolution actually started in Ukraine. The biggest slaughter of Christians since Constantinople occurred in Ukraine. But you all just don't learn it because the people who write the history books are communists. They only want you to go, look, there was a Vietnam War, America pushed the Vietnamese. They're evil. Ooh. You know. Yeah, Russians were just as oppressed under the USSR as everybody else. Except in Ukraine. You know Ukraine was the one with the boot on people's neck in most countries? Eastern Europe hates the Ukrainians. Most of the Russians in Eastern Europe were Ukrainians. Most of the Russian army or secret police weren't Russian. They're ethnics, but they're not Russians. They weren't ethnic Russians. It's like how the Tsar used the Cossacks to oppress the Russians. And then the Russians took out their anger on the Cossacks. But you look at communism and you go, man, the Tsar was right to oppress these people. You're wrapped up so much in paper-thin 2D politics, but you failed the nuance test. I'm trying to educate and uplift. Introduce some critical thinking. And understand that the way forward is to cut ties with the past. Ukraine can't do that. That's why they won't end this war. Before I continue, I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the book ProWritingAid, Power Games, Into the Elsbound, and the Erotic Tales from the Empire, Part 1 out now, Part 2 coming soon. Thank you to all those who support the channel, and you can support the channel through the links in my link tree. Now, as we go through the major news, there really isn't much to tell. This gives you some idea how big a Russian drone is. And don't forget, this ain't moving that fast. This is alleged display of destroyed Russian equipment. Look how empty the square is. It's like, wow. Ukraine is like such an ego. Zelensky's made a lot of claims. He actually admitted that POC is under pressure, but claims Russia's made no gains. That's bullshit. He's again describing so-called Dopropilia. That's that city that he's liberated how many times now? Oh man, this guy is such an ego. And such a liar. But, you know, the left, they don't care about the truth. They care about optics. They rely on the fact that the vast majority of people who have a mobile phone don't use it to look anything up. And if they do, they hope that the Google search results will be confirmation of the left-wing political bias through the phony mainstream media stories. It's getting harder and harder to discern the truth because the truth is getting memory hold. Look at that. How many times have we seen this picture? How many times have they recycled the same stories to fill you with this idea that Russia's systematically destroying Kiev, yet they show you the same few buildings. Russia hits the truck parks, the rail lines, a few office buildings, but that's it. The majority of the city's still there and functional. Now, Russia has, of course, penetrated successfully Ukrainian air defenses. To that end, a long-range air defense system, the Patriot, is in place. But it ain't covering, it's covering Zelensky's ass. As you can see, it's covering their telecommunications hub, which is on the outskirts of Kiev. An electronic warfare system, but it ain't stopping Russian missiles because a ballistic missile goes terminal. There's a reason why they call it the terminal arc, okay? It doesn't need any guidance. Once it's reached that point, it's self-guiding. It needs no further guidance. No jamming is going to make it turn off. And by the time you detect it, the next frame, it's halfway down. The next frame, it's up your nose with a rubber hose, you know. But they claim they're constantly bombing infrastructure in urban areas. What did you bomb, Zelensky? You know, he's such a crybaby. How can anybody think he's a man? He's a boy in his father's suit. He's a puppet of the mainstream media. And God have it's a shame, but in a way, the left, they deserve to suffer. They're miserable. And but Russia's engaged in a new strategy. Now, the winter, we've seen light snowfall. Believe me, I've seen heavy snowfall, and this is actually light. They say this is a snowstorm. No, bro, in a snowstorm, your camera lens freezes and cracks, okay? You would just see white sleet, and that would be white, and that would be covered in ice. I have seen negative double-digit temperatures, and You know that feeling when you open the freezer? Yeah. Imagine that feeling, but you're in a polo suit. This guy's wearing ordinary pants. No, bro. I've had to put on the real deal, and like it is numbing. All right, it is very numbing, very quickly, and it ain't pleasant. Now, the goal of an energy crisis is, of course, to destabilize Ukraine, to basically rob them of their ability to fight, particularly in the winter, where Russian winter uniforms are more effective and they make more ground in the winter. Although this summer they've made a lot of ground. So, of course, winter destroyed the Napoleon and Hitler. And they do. The General Winter is the most loyal ally of Russia, right? The Russian winter, even the Mongols, would move south. They've eventually given up on most of Russia. Now, to weaponize winter, they are destabilizing the power grid of Ukraine. The millions of refugees, but war fatigue, Poland and Germany in particular, the growing negativity towards the Ukrainian war. Now, they're only using the low end of the figures, and for obvious reasons. They are pro-Ukrainian, but there's 5 answers, right? There's from very supportive, neutral, negative, and very negative view of Ukraine. I do think a majority are between negative and neutral. Well, that means the Ukrainians do not have overwhelming support, as Ursula von der Leyen and Keir Starmer claims. But pushing Ukrainians into Europe to overwhelm their immigration system is basically recognizing the fact that Europe is going to hate Russia. Europe hates Russia, so there's no reason to play nice. Europe, you brought this on yourself. You provoked Russia. And yet, of course, Europeans will always play the victim card and claim that they're the victims of Russian aggression. Well, after all, they're a nation of feminist cucks and bullshit artists. They've pretty much defiled, and spat on everything our ancestors once stood for: truth, justice. Our ancestors didn't like democracy. They knew what democracy was. It's communism light. It's the mob controlling the people with fear and intimidation. Now, we don't have much in the way of Russian drone and missile strikes in Ukraine. We know there was some Ukrainian attacks on Russia. We know the Russians hit the Sumy. That's one of their favourite targets. Fighting in the buffer zone without any advancing. Same in the north. Kupiansk still fighting on the outskirts. Looks like now they're trying to drive out the Ukrainians. But they control the key road. Yeah. It's weird, right? But they didn't finish this road, or did they cut off? They cut off, yeah. The road isn't finished. There's a road up to the rail, but there's a truck park, but there's no bridge. You have to go all the way down here. And it's controlled by the Russians. The Ukrainians made some pretty piss-poor decisions, I tell you. The Russians are hitting them at every bottleneck. They are making advances. Not many and not far. But they are fighting in the outskirts of Seversk. but they haven't penetrated Seversk. Most areas, there's hardly any fighting. Again, that's due to the snowfall. But they did hit Konsk and other areas. Hard to say, but I don't think they've made many advances at all. But Ukraine's lying about Psk. Outskirts of Psk, Russians made huge advances. So I said, the Russians knew that Ukraine moved troops up here. Ukraine made Kiev Independent published it. I think the Russians knew before the Kiev Independent published it, but that's beside the point. The Kiev Independent published it. They launched a counteroffensive to retake the Russians had actually made advances down this road, but the Ukrainians had pushed them back. But Russian assault forces elsewhere in the city, and as you can see, they've made some advances in the center of Psk. So, Zelensky, you are a liar. Oh yeah, and also here they've made more advances on the outskirts. Yeah, they've taken more territory out in other areas as well, but they're still only fighting on the northern front of Mirod. But Russian assault forces have made forays into the town. Now, a lot of this town is destroyed on the outskirts, but the main town here, pretty intact. Bits and pieces of fighting along here. Nothing really of consequence. The Russians have moved backwards and forwards here often. I think it's more about the strategy of locking Ukrainians into place and then going about their business elsewhere. But as you can see, Hurley, Tam, and Pok, these 1, 2, 3. I thought the Russians would pick one, smash it, pick the corner, go down the line, but it looks like they're going to tap at the line rather than. So they're going to make Ukraine divide its forces, move reinforcements up, keep these guys here guessing, keep these guys here hunkered down. Probably, depending on how the battles go, they would flank this, got a long way to go before they hit this, but they'll probably be firing on this pretty soon with long-range rockets. But it depends. Now they've hit Nikopol again. Again, it's about during the winter, they're going to be using less glide bombs, less rockets, and it's going to be more artillery. Artillery is way more reliable in the winter than rocket forces. Although, as far as I know, the Russians' rockets do operate in low and sub-zero temperatures. But, yeah. But hey, Crimea, yet again, 100% defended. Radio interference and jamming and drones, mostly shot down. Ukraine is suffering. Now, apparently, Dmitriev has been hit hard by Russian forces with guards and other Ukrainian militants being killed, along with destruction of vehicles and other equipment. And then but overall, over 1,000 casualties across the entire battlefield. Nothing really stands out. Now, with the American announcement of no Tomahawks, of course, two-tier has stepped in. You can guarantee one thing about Keir Starmer. He is consistent in screwing the British people over, and is going to prop up his fellow Jewish leader of Ukraine. Most people don't know this, but yeah, Keir Starmer's a Jew, Zelensky's a Jew. What a shock that they prop each other up, and that UK will stand behind them forever and a day and supply them with everything they need to wage holy war. Yeah, I'm not going to let that one go. Captain Skyshield gets a suppository. Of which most never make it to target. Now, they're dropped at long range. They are not powered. They're not really cruise missiles. They're glide bombs with a fancy name. Although, apparently they could go 250 kilometres. They're still glide bombs. They're dropped from extreme high altitude. Air-launched. They call them air-launched rockets and then cruise missiles. They got fucking wings, no motor. Oh, they got a little bit of a motor, but you know what I mean. It's only to get them a bit of arc. Bit of manoeuvring, that's it. Unspecified number. To help maintain their campaign of long-range attacks. Yeah. Pinpricks. They secretly sent missiles and how to use them. And if it's secret, why is it on RT? Yeah. Such a secret. Remember, they got this off the Telegraph, so big secret, everybody. Shh, don't tell the Russians, okay? Oh, wait. Now, Hungary has made the boldest statement yet. We're not obliged to fund Ukraine, and we have no reason to do so. This isn't just funding their war. They have no moral, political, economic reason to fund the war or fund their country. That's why Brussels is so agitated, because they want to seize... Brussels is divided. Most politicians in Belgium are against using the Russian... it's the bureaucrats, the single-minded, selfish leftists who don't obey the rule of law. They think the laws are suggestions. Rules are for thee, not for the D. But they want anybody's weapons, no matter where they come from. Once they're in Ukraine soil, they're legitimate targets. West weapon shipments have done little to encourage peace talks. They have a negative effect. The Ukrainians see these shipments coming past day in, day out and believe they're winning the war. Right? They have that any day now there'll be a crusade against the Russians and Ukraine will be liberated. You know, this is the problem when you are political. You build layers of cope. $400 million they're asking for. 400 billion. 400 billion. Russia spends 160 a year. Captain Skyshield is only worth 100 and something billion. Russia spends more on the war than Ukraine generates a year in revenue, and that revenue is falling. It has fallen below 50% for the first time. Okay, Ukrainian industry has stalled. The Ukrainian government is penniless. Their foreign reserves are stocked up, whatever they could get from Brussels and other NGOs. But the EU emergency fund is going to run out. All the secret cash they got from Poland and others for the last 10 years is running out. 400 billion. This, I think, where we got that figure is the estimated time it would take if they went on the offensive, were able to maintain the offensive, and across all sectors push the Russians back. That's where I think the cost is. How long it would take. Years to push the Russians back. And even if they did, there's no guarantee that Russia will not scorched earth Ukraine. I'm not talking about the scorched earth retreat. I'm talking about everything along the front line. Just constantly hammered. No building. Hit every target, every structure. There'll be nothing. Underground galleries collapsed. Won't be a piece of equipment left on the battlefield that isn't broken, scratched, or booby-trapped. And that doesn't include the rocket and missile attacks on cities and towns. And there won't be a single person. The entire population will move out. So they'll make sure Crimea, they'll salt the earth even. I kid you not. The cost of victory will be millions of dead Ukrainians. There will be no victory. Europe is so delusional. But that's because so many Europeans are soaked with the brain rot of liberalism. As we can see, drone after drone. Where's the Ukrainian Air Force? Where's the Ukrainian missile defenses? Where's the jamming? Where is... Right? Where's the machine gun fire even? The Ukrainian forces... Now, you're going to say Russians are deliberately targeting civilian housing here. But why would they target those particular houses instead of just systematically destroying them one after each other? Why are the majority of houses left intact? There's a... Right, okay. Russia is systematically destroying Ukrainian forces, not Ukraine or Ukrainians. They're attacking the military. They're attacking the Ukrainian... these houses are probably where Ukrainians have cache, or where they're billeting, or their officers, or their secret police. The Russians are not wasting resources, okay? They have a set budget, $127 billion. They just signed a $230 billion trade deal with China. They just sold another $100 billion in oil to India. Russia is not hurting or wanting for money right now. The Russian economy is still slowly growing. Russia is on a 10 to 12 year trajectory. They're only a couple of years in to not just re-territorizing, as they call it, but reinforcing their borders, reinstitutionalizing their military, revitalizing. They have built the most churches in the last 10 years. They have more churches than Western Europe. And they are rebuilding their economy. And though their population is not yet growing, nor is Europe's. Even Europe, with its mass migration, their population is still in decline. Because the migrants aren't... Yeah. This so-called revitalization using migrants, that's a cope, okay? It's a lie. It's just to bring in replacement. It's just to keep the... it's to bring in cheaper labour. But it's all short term. Look at France. What has the cheap labour done for France? Drained their economy. Because they don't spend money. People can't afford the goods. The goods eventually can be made in China cheaper. And instead of protecting their economy, they shoot themselves in the foot. Instead of rebuilding their economy, they shoot themselves in the foot. When told to stop making woke video games, they make a dozen woke video games. France, it's like talking to a Frenchman's like talking to a imbecile, right? You can picture book explain economics to them and they'll still go, but that's not fair. It's like explaining the man, right, that marrying an OnlyFans model is like buying a used car. It's junk. And you know it's junk. Then don't be surprised when it breaks down. Yet they still do it anyway. Now, victory is not guaranteed, and victory is going to be messy. It is not going to be victory on the battlefield. It's going to be a negotiated settlement. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, sooner or later, Trump is going to find that magic pressure point on both Zelensky and Putin. And I don't believe for a minute that Trump is not putting pressure on Zelensky. He's just not publicly doing it. But it's going to happen. Sooner or later, they'll find that magic button and Europe will back off. UK will quietly retire Keir Starmer. Shame they won't do what they need to do to Keir Starmer and the other traitors. But it is what it is, right, for now. But thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support the channel through Ko-Fi, Patreon, which I have too. Buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree. Description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you to everybody who supports the channel. Whether you press like, share, subscribe. YouTube algorithms are constantly changing. They rely on you, not just to watch the entire video, but to do everything. Because basically, though, at the end of the day, YouTube are trying to bleed me of money to get me to advertise. Same as Facebook. They're all just trying to take back every cent they give you and more. They want no outflow, only inflow. I wish there was a better way. I wish there was a way to convince people to do the right thing. But if we could convince people the right thing, we wouldn't have liberals now, would we? Bye for now.